our next speaker, Jen White. As you'll see, Jen is a passionate HR business leader with experience in many different industries and most recently joined Avnet Technology Solutions as their ANZ HR Director. She has an outstanding record in leading teams through change, leveraging commercial insights and providing pragmatic solutions to improve business outcomes. The challenges of being responsible for leading organisational culture whilst at the same time being part of it are familiar territory to her. Jen will share with us her personal journey of leadership, culture and courage. Please welcome Jen.
Well, I did it. I started this new job and so far so good. I think they like me. I think it'll work out okay. I can get stuff done and still get home on time for Mitchell. Oh my God, I miss him. I feel like I'm living my day by the clock. And all I keep thinking about is if I do an okay job, just fly under the radar. If it hits 5 o'clock, maybe 5:15, I will have overachieved. Then I can get home, just pick him up, breathe him in, quick dinner, bath, bed. The new industry's weird. Never thought I'd work in tobacco. They seem like nice people, not like I'd imagined. They have this really funny saying that they have to like each other because all the other bastards hate us. They don't all chain smoke at their desks either. I've been asked to do their leadership program, complete some 360 survey. Should be okay. I don't really know what it's about, but apparently it'll teach me some new, better way of thinking. Just hope to God I get to do mine after I've passed probation. Mind you, they've got 4% staff turnover, so I'd have to be pretty shitty to get it that wrong, surely. So from there to here in 7 or 8 years, think for a moment about the place of courage. Iconic examples come to mind, the obvious ones. Gandhi, Mandela, more recently, Barack Obama, Sheryl Sandberg, lean in. That gorgeous Canadian, he does not need a name. Malala. I thought about courage, the definition, and when I looked it up in the dictionary, this was an example of a definition which really resonated with me. Courage is the ability to take action despite the risk of possible adverse consequences or when one has doubts or fears. Then I thought about what does it mean to have courage in Australia? Examples like Waleed, Georgie for her work with transgender teens, Rosie Batty for giving a voice to domestic violence, and isn't that an issue in this country that we need to talk about in public domain and look to find a fix on that. Fabian Datner and the faculty of the Homeward Bound project and the work that they're doing for our planet. For me, it means that rage of the heart. It sometimes presents itself as quiet resolve, sometimes giving really brave advice or being a passionate advocate in this privileged role that I have as an HR leader. Today it presents itself as being a little bit out there, a little bit open, a whole lot transparent, a little bit vulnerable. Because I recognise that as leaders, it fuels our conversations, it fuels our thinking, and that's how we learn individually and collectively. So let me ask you, what's your experience of leadership? What are you seeing happening at the moment? I'm observing lots of short-term, month to month, quarter to quarter, busyness of business, hyperactivity, upsizing, downsizing, right-sizing, mergers, acquisitions, amalgamations. Sound about right? Hands up if you can relate to that at all. Hands up high, look around. You're in good company. And thank God it's not just a Melbourne thing, because that would have fallen really flat. It's a bit of a race to the bottom of the barrel. As a result, the culture in many organisations just isn't great, and it can be pretty shitty in a lot of places. And I wonder if it's because it's just so damn rare. And if we don't see it, we can't change it. Data heads, pay attention. If you like your data, you're going to love this. Everyone else, check your phones for a couple of minutes. Swinburne University has produced a study called Leadership for the Greater Good. Get it, download it. It'll take you half an hour to read, and it is worth it. It penetrates more deeply into why the way we feel the way we do about our leaders and what we expect of them. So it cuts across all types of leadership, from political to business to religious and community leaders. Only 6% of corporate leaders are very trustworthy. 55% of Australians believe that we're somewhat competent. Like, are we okay with that? And leaders care more about the short term. If you need more convincing, Towers Watson produced a global workforce study in 2014. Again, only 44% of Australian employees said their leaders were effective. And 35% feel that their organisations do a good job of developing future leaders. So we're not great, and we're getting worse. Yet, interestingly, leadership has the most ability to influence the employee experience, which for me is quite insightful, because it used to be about wellbeing and all those programs, all the beautiful programs that we have. And whilst they're still important, leadership actually has the most ability to influence the employee experience. So why? Why is it? Is it too hard? Is it because we don't see it happening anywhere? We don't believe it's possible, or we're blind to it? Maybe we don't realise it's up to us. So here's the thing. You're a leader, right? You wouldn't be here if you weren't. The gift bags are great and we all love the pens. But think about when you've been courageous. When have you had that moment in the pit of your gut and then had 20 seconds of insane courage, thought, I can do this, and gone and done it anyway? Have you had a moment like that? This is what a constructive culture delivers. So, to Sean's point earlier, leadership and culture drives performance. This is data from an organisation that I was really proud to work in. It's a quick case study that shows that with a constructive culture, we can bring about happy, engaged employees, improved leadership effectiveness, and increased profitability in an environment that was going through radical change, was incredibly dynamic. And I was part of leading in that constructive culture. We had clarity of purpose and values, real trust and collaboration, freedom to innovate, and a best-in-class transformational leadership program. And year on year, we could see improvements as a result. And for me, my leadership improved because of that culture. I recognised the transition that I'd gone through, being just a working mum, and that I was part of an amazing organisation where it was not just safe to learn, but it was expected. So how did I do that? I had a really solid LSI debriefing. I focused on we over I, we're better together. Collaboration works. I started practicing constructive language, framing up things by saying, I wonder, or could we, should we, what if? Where I felt conflicted and when I was getting caught up in my own head, dealing with these things early, deal with it as a priority before I got caught up in my own story, which wasn't helpful. So deal with it early before it becomes an anchor. Speak up early, even if it's social. And naming my fears. A classic example was when I had to go in and present to the executive team, which for me was a big deal because people in positions of authority were a real issue for me, and it really brought out my green styles. So speaking up early in meetings and naming my fears, where my manager at the time said to me, what are you worried about? I was about to go in to present a whole heap of salary data. I said, what if it's all wrong? What if there's a problem like all the way down here and I've rolled up all of this information and the whole thing's just fucking wrong? She said, don't worry, it's okay. Just breathe, say it out loud, now sing it to the tune of Happy Birthday. I did because I'm gullible, but it made me laugh and it made me realise that getting caught up in my own head was just not useful for me, it wasn't helpful. So, this shit is real. This is what I thought when I did my retest in 2012. Oh my God, this shit is real. It works and I feel better for it. Thought I'd trick the test temporarily, but no, I actually felt better for it. Then things changed. 2 key leadership roles changed, the business model changed. It became about month to month, quarter to quarter. Everything that we had done was devalued, was stripped out, and what took years to build was eroded in a matter of weeks. Heartbreaking. Turnover spiked, fear kicked in, and guess what? I put into practice my new skills. But it was falling on deaf ears. It wasn't a priority. And I was being labelled resistant and difficult. So I ask you, in that moment, knowing that things are out of alignment, the organisation was a little out of kilter from what you knew it to be. What would it take for you to have shown up? Call it out. Have you had a moment like that? What could you have done? Because being a courageous leader is taking action in that moment. Again, 20 seconds of insane courage. If we truly believe in changing the world one organisation at a time, doesn't it start here? Doesn't it start with me? Doesn't it start with you? I believe that I'm not a leader if I'm inside my own head. I believe I have a voice and it matters. I believe that my example is really critical for others to follow at a time when, for me, it would have been much easier to just bunker down till the storm passed. So what did I do in that environment? I stepped up, communicated honestly, openly, asked the questions, sought feedback, said what I believe needed to be said, and I kept hitting walls. I thought it reflected my lack of knowledge, my lack of skill, I wasn't managing up well enough, I wasn't sending enough emails, and my worst self was evident because my values were under threat. So my husband Paul and I have this really interesting tradition every year where we get the kids babysat, we go out for a boozy Christmas dinner together, get the Christmas shopping done. It's incredibly high risk, you grab a trolley each and off you go. It works, it's a lot of fun. It was at this dinner that seemingly out of nowhere, Paul held my hand and said, "Dal, you've got to leave." What? He said, "You need to leave. You're not failing, you're not quitting, you're not giving in, you need to leave. What you bring, they don't value." I broke down. What you bring, they don't value. And then I thought, stuff it, I can beat this. Went away, had my summer holiday. About 2 weeks later, after my first day back at work, I found myself standing on the back veranda, talking to my children. "Mitchell, Bo, come inside now and eat your dinner. For God's sake, do we have to go through this every night? Are we going to do this for the rest of our lives? It is so disrespectful. You make me so mad. I'm disgusted in you." Who the fuck are you? Ripping into a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Yeah, not good, not good. For being loving brothers, jumping on a trampoline, doing exactly what you would want for them to do. I realised in that moment that the culture had changed and I was being affected by it. A culture that I have been so proud to lead, so proud to lead, but one that I was grieving over. And I had to be brave enough to leave, so I did. In that moment, rang up and resigned. That culture shaped me to be more brave, constructive and courageous. So what did I do then? As an agnostic, who's got fairly colourful language, if you hadn't picked that already, strong beliefs in diversity and inclusion, I did what seemed to be a curiously safe option, and I joined a Christian non-for-profit. One that wanted to change their culture, yet had relatively little skill in doing so. They were going through massive sector change with the introduction of the NDIS, rapid increase in their staff numbers, gaining programs all the time, and they had 75% employee attrition. Workers' comp claims, employee disputes and grievances were on the rise, and to me it just felt really mean. Wasn't at all what the brochure pictured. For the board and the CEO to invest in leadership development, recognise that they needed to do something different, was incredibly courageous and good on them. And at the risk of sounding like Dr. Seuss, culture will do what culture will do. If you don't manage it, it will manage you. And that was exactly what was happening in this environment. And my role was to lead that culture change, which again was an incredible privilege, to act on behalf of the staff who do amazing work in the community, to think long term for the greater good. I designed a cultural blueprint that was centred around a transformational leadership program. The LSI was the backbone of that. And as you'd imagine, in that sector, in that environment, there was huge slabs of green and red playing out in the LSIs. Then I had my retest. And guess what? It just goes to show that what you can do from red and green, you can do from blue. In 3 years, I delivered quantifiable results, millions of dollars savings, brought staff attrition down from 65% to a stable 17%. And the greatest indicator was that we had to find a bigger venue for the Christmas party because people wanted to come. Right? So how did I do that? I had to be really, really sharp in my focus. I had to put aside any green, any avoidance. I had to ask the big questions. And it got really fun. I actually enjoyed it because I could see the results. It was working. Questions like, do you have any idea about what it's like to be on the other side of you? Getting leaders to think about their impact. Teaching people to quit it with the blame and judgment. Put it aside. It does not help. Sometimes saying no. Putting time in my diary for strategic planning because the day job will always get done. It just does. And surrounding myself with really capable contributors. Because leadership is one of the most damn complicated things that you're ever going to do in your life. So why do you think you can do it alone? So here's what I learnt. Leadership's a choice. You choose to show up. It's not about position. It's not about title, rank, hierarchy. It's a choice. Knowing yourself is critical. What's important to you, your purpose and your values, because then it can be a lot of fun. Be curious and ask why. Quit it with the blame and judgment. You have a voice and it matters. We cannot be green about this. There is a leadership crisis in this country. 55% of people believe that, right? You all put your hands up, most of you. And we can learn so much from our kids. Into my maternity leave, I was about 10 weeks in and I contacted the organisation that I'd worked for and my replacement hadn't worked out. So I decided to lead a conversation about returning to work. The organisation was at a really critical point in their leadership and culture journey. And if they knew how to do it, they'd already be doing it, right? So I decided to step back in, Emily in tow, at the ripe old age of 10 weeks. And it was great. It just worked. And interestingly, having a baby in the office lifts the standard of behaviour. It's fun. So what would I say of that experience? Again, I learnt a lot. I learnt that there was a stuck state within the organisational belief system, that this resulted in really good leaders who were just afraid of change, and that the organisation wasn't ready for the next order of change. I recognised that I led that culture a great distance, and it's led me to where I am today. At an amazing organisation, it's early days, I'm about 3 months in, at a terrific organisation called Avnet Technology Solutions. We're a global IT services and distribution organisation that transforms technology into business solutions for customers around the world. It's taken me 3 months to learn that. We recognise that engaged employees enhance the customer experience and allow Avnet to achieve profitable growth. And I just know with that as a vision and a backdrop, we'll only go from strength to strength. And I'm still just a working mum. Although the tribe has grown to include 1-year-old Emily, and yes, we're done, no more. I do not want to drive a car with a sliding door, there will be no more. I manage the daily juggle that comes with that, like many of you here, although I now view leadership through a slightly different lens. You know, as the mother of both sons and a daughter, I recognise the responsibility that I have as a female in a leadership role, which is pretty rare. It's my responsibility, I believe, to show my sons and my daughter that it's not just, okay for women to be in leadership roles, but that it's right. So for me as a leader in my job, a leader in my community, a leader of my family, in a world where we are just bombarded with inspirational quotes daily, it's bloody stressful, it really is. Yet horror and fear placed, all over mainstream media. I just hope that I can continue to show up and that you'll join me. So imagine a place where we each had the courage to show up, to call out what you know is inherently out of kilter in organisations, in your life, in your world. What would you be doing if you were being true to yourself? If you did more of this, how would things be different? It's possible, right? It's entirely possible. If not you, then who? If not now, then when? Thank you.